આનંદીબેન મફતભાઈ પટેલ ઈશ્વરના નામે સોગંદ લઉં છું કે કાયદાથી સ્થાપિત ભારતના સંવિધાન પ્રત્યે હું સાચી શ્રદ્ધા અને નિષ્ઠા ધરાવીશ. હું ભારતના સાર્વભૌમત્વનું અને અખંડતાનું સમર્થન કરીશ અને હું ગુજરાત રાજ્યના મુખ્યમંત્રી તરીકેના મારા કર્તવ્યો શ્રદ્ધાપૂર્વક અને અંતઃકરણપૂર્વક બજાવીશ.
Right, so that's the new Chief Minister of Gujarat, Anandiben Patel, who took over from Narendra Modi, who will be sworn in as Prime Minister on Monday. Now, the question we are asking is, what is Gujarat after Modi? The reason we are asking this question is because a lot of debate around Gujarat and the Gujarat model has been linked to Modi. So his departure, does that mean that the model is strong enough to outlive him in some sense? Or was it always tied to him, and therefore should we be concerned? We're going to be asking questions, taking questions from you as well. Joining me are Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, author of the book Modi, the Man and the Times; Aakar Patel, a journalist and columnist; and with me right here is Ayaz Memon at Cricketwala. Ayaz, let's begin with you quickly.
Yeah, I think what we need to understand from Aakar and from Nilanjan, of course, is what is Anandiben's USP, if there is, and also, now that Narendra Modi has shifted to Delhi, is the focus on Gujarat model, or the Gujarat model of development, now going to, kind of wane? Will it become not so consequential and everybody watching what's happening in Delhi? I suppose that's inevitable.
Yeah. Or will everyone forget about it?
Or will everyone forget about it? Yeah.
Okay. Aakar, do you want to go first?
Sure. Her USP is that she's loyal. She's been with Modi since the 80s. She was part of the small team. Along with Modi from Gujarat that launched the first leg of Advani's Yatra. The other important thing is Sheila Patel, the dominant present caste of Gujarat that has been a base of the BJP vote bank. She's a teacher, used to be a teacher, not particularly bright, I would say. When I was in Gujarat, I received an invite from her peppered with spelling errors. I think in using her as Chief Minister, Modi will do two things. The first is, as Minister for all the primary portfolios that Modi himself was interested in, ports, mines and minerals,
revenue,
industries, he kept Aakar Patel as his deputy, a man from the US related to the Ambanis, very sound technically. He was sworn in today with a very small cabinet, and I think that will be retained. That the issues that Modi is himself interested in will go to Aakar Patel. Anandiben Patel will be the political leader of the BJP in the state, and I think that there will be a split in the function that Mr. Modi had, and the political side of it will go to the Chief Minister. All the Gujarat shining stuff will remain with Aakar Patel.
Okay. Nilanjan, let me ask you about, are you familiar with Anandiben Patel? I mean, did you come across her or her work during your research on the book on Modi?
Well, not very much, but that is not the real focus of my trying to understand Modi. By and large, I agree with what Aakar said, and I would just like to add possibly the only additional thing which tilted the balance in favor of Anandiben Patel, if there was ever a matter of having a choice to make, is that she probably will never at any stage in her remaining political career threaten the political base of Modi. She would never have even remotely the possibility of developing ambitions of her own distinct from Modi, whereas the others, being part of an setup in Gujarat where there have been various factions, all of which have been suppressed by Modi because of his strong iron hand, that might come up, and the others could at some point have developed political ambitions.
Right. So there could be good and not so good emerging or coming out of this appointment or her appointment as Chief Minister. Ayaz?
Yeah, just a quick question maybe to Aakar or Nilanjan, whoever chooses to answer. Now, he's got the whole cake, not a slice of the cake, Narendra Modi. But will he be able to cut off the umbilical cord, because the Gujarat model is so synonymous with him, and he's been pretty much a completely hands-on person in the affairs of Gujarat. So do you think that he'll just kind of snap ties with Gujarat and move on and look at the rest of the country now?
Well, the Gujarat model, in the way that he conceived it, on the administrative side, comprised of a very compact cabinet. The largest cabinet I can remember in Gujarat was 9 ministers. I think today 6 were sworn in. So in that sense, that format has been retained. Difference is, as I said, most of the core ministries that Modi was himself interested in, he retained. In this case, my guess is that they will all go away. Saurabh was Minister of State for the longest period. Both him and Amit Shah were not given cabinet status for 10 years because Mr. Modi found them going too big. And he was given cabinet rank only when Mr. Modi began his march towards Delhi. So I think what will happen is that the Gujarat model ministries, which are the ones that Adani, Ambani, Torrent, SR, Tata are linked to, will be not in the purview of the Chief Minister. They will remain with Saurabh Patel, who my sense is will more or less report directly to Mr. Modi.
Okay. So, Aakar, you're saying that, I mean, your interpretation of the Gujarat model is therefore economic and then economic linked to business and the success of business in the state. Is that right?
Well, I think there are many ways you can look at the model. The most important aspect, in my view, is actually cultural, that we are the only state to have mercantile castes in Muslims, you know, the Memons, the Khojas, the Boras, in the Parsis, in Jains and in Hindus. So Gujarat is unique in that sense. 11 out of the 55 Forbes billionaires have Gujarati origin. So I don't think that it's any model that a government can impose on a very, very qualified, very, very ancient mercantile community. They will do well no matter what. After 91, when the Gujarati was given access to the world's markets and the world's capital, he would do it. And I think he will continue to do it in that sense.
Right. So, I guess you're therefore answering my next question, which is that, you know, the continuance of this model as we know it in the popular sense, particularly as drilled into us in the last 4 or 5 months. So the model therefore continues without much.
It does continue, because one thing that Gujaratis are good at, and Mr. Modi has kept that going, is making sure that government responds to industry. The problem is that most of India's growth has come from services. Gujarat is the only major state in India to have a skew that is against services. The pie chart of Gujarat, if you look at the GDP of the state, is skewed towards industry, which makes it unique. Most other states, it's skewed towards services. I think that will not change. And I think that is the hurdle, the roadblock that the next Chief Minister would need to figure out. I don't think Anandiben is the person to do it.
So, Nilanjan, just to take off from what Aakar mentioned, one of the major differences between, say, the earlier regime, or maybe the Congress particularly, is that they call the shots from Delhi. The state satraps hardly ever got to become, you know, big in their, got power in their own right, so to speak. Now, one of the major points that the BJP has emerged with, they've got very strong chief ministers, Narendra Modi himself being the prime example, Shivraj Chauhan, Raman Singh, even Vasundhara Raje to an extent. Is the dynamic going to remain the same with Narendra Modi there, or is it going to change?
Well, definitely they'll not be the same as far as Gujarat is concerned, because it's fairly clear that this entire Gujarat government is going to be controlled by a remote control from Delhi, which is why Anandiben is there, and as Aakar is saying, that she would not be given charge even on a day-to-day basis of those ministries which are actually pertaining to the Gujarat model, which actually is Gujarat shining ministries. Now, the issue, the point to see is to how things evolve between Modi as Prime Minister and Shivraj Chauhan, the Chief Minister, and Vasundhara Raje, the Chief Minister. Manohar Parrikar also. All three fairly strong, fairly competent and assertive Chief Ministers. Are they going to become part of the Congress kind of running systems where the directions are given by the center and the states follow, or are they going to continue to be as assertive on the national leadership as they have got used to in the years that at least Shivraj Chauhan has been in power for close to 10 years? So, and Vasundhara Raje has also been in power at the previous point of time. So, are they going to be assertive, or are they going to take the direction from the Prime Minister's office? Those are interesting things to see, and for us, important to track whether Modi is able to write a signature all over the BJP, every state, or he has to play second fiddle in some areas. Politically, I think it's a very significant aspect of Modi's evolution, but my hunch is that that's the way that he's steamrolled his way through the opposition within the Sangh Parivar in the last year and a half, and also had very little need to go and pick up allies, and is where today doing what he is without changing what he was 13 years ago. I don't see him really diluting his posture in terms of relationships with any of the Gujarat, with any of the Bharatiya Janata Party chief ministers.
Aakar, do you think Modi still has a point to prove when it comes to Gujarat, or was that a point that had a limited run, so to speak, now that he's moved on to bigger things?
No, he didn't have a point to prove. I think he is demonstrably competent. He is demonstrably successful. This election was strange in that it should have been a referendum on the UPA. It turned out to be a referendum on Modi, one medium-sized state, the chief minister of which came out nationally, thumped his chest, said, "This is what I can do for you in the whole of the country. Vote for me because of this." I think the UPA just backed down. People voted for him. I don't think he has anything else to do.
So, Aakar, let me put the question this way then. What is it that could suffer? I mean, I think both of you seem to agree that Anandiben Patel is not, obviously doesn't have the same, doesn't come into the same weight and gravitas that Modi did. So, what could suffer now in Gujarat now that he's moved on and she now, or someone like her, is running the show?
I think the BJP will suffer, given the fact that it's been dominated by one of the most charismatic leaders in the subcontinent. I think his departure will mean that there will be an angling for power with Anandiben. She's 73. She's 20 years older than he was when he first became CM. And there are lots of people who don't accept her as either the leader of the Patels or as she's from a subsect of the Patel called the Kadwas, and nor as the CM. So I think within the BJP, finally there will be some kind of churn. The Congress will have an opening. It's kept a third of the state's vote share, 34% all these years, but has not been able to make a significant impact in terms of seats. I think this will give it the opening, politically speaking. I think Mr. Modi will retain control over Gujarat for one reason alone, which is that in terms of industry, it responds best to what he sees as the model for the rest of the country. And it's large enough as a state with a very long coastline to be able to deliver some of the strategic stuff that he wants done from Delhi.
Okay, so Nilanjan, your sense, I mean, Modi obviously as a man likes to control, and that is more than evident from all the things that we've seen. He has a certain way of working administratively through the bureaucracy and a certain degree of, again, a combination of control and delegation.
Right.
How is this, I mean, I know we're sort of revisiting an older question, but how is this going to transplant in your mind at the national level?
At a national level, depends on the kind of the ministry that he finally puts together, whether he's going to bring the Gujarat model in terms of bringing a fairly small, lean cabinet, whether he's going to restructure major ministries. There's some talk of restructuring home, there's some talk of tinkering around with INB, various other issues are being discussed. Still not very clear, we'll know about it on Monday. But my own hunch is that he is going to induct people only who he thinks can be controlled and be pliable.
Right.
He would not want any minister who would be willing, especially after this mandate, who would be willing to take an independent stance and become confrontationist.
Right. So Nilanjan,
a lot of problems.
Yeah, quick sideways question. So you saw the speech he gave in Parliament the day before. Now, are you and that was as all the as media and everyone has been saying, quite a different person from what he was, let's say, in the run-up to the elections. Is that are these both the same personality, or are we seeing some new kind of split personality?
Quite the same person, but also the same person. In fact, this is a very interesting mix. That yes, he does bring down his decibel level. He does make a major shift towards trying to becoming a statesman. He definitely starts walking a different kind of a talk. But there are still large areas which he does not visit. He still does not accept and tell his people that we need to understand that despite the fact that we have got such a huge mandate, it is very important priority for us. Even reach out to the last man, who did not come and vote for us. 31%, 32% is still not the whole of India. There are large chunks of India, not in terms of just vote share, but also sections of society which stay in a completely segregated manner. These have, the results has resulted in a kind of a sense of elation among his supporters, And there is a tremendous amount of anxiety among those people who have not voted for him, either individually or as socially segregated groups. I think there are tenuous times. Modi will have to, the Prime Minister will have to become more accommodative.
Okay.
So just a kind of Aakar, an oblique kind of question to what Govind asked and what Nilanjan answered. If you heard his speech and if you had not got like an understanding of what perhaps the criticism against him was earlier, it almost seemed like you know, it was government for the poor, of the poor, by the poor, and that's the kind of you know, first broadcast to the nation. So this whole talk of, you know, Gujarat model, the heavy reliance or the dependence on the corporate sector of favors being done to them.
I mean, are you saying reliance on reliance, or what are you saying?
Okay. But you know, it seemed as if you know, the inclusiveness which everybody thought he may not have seemed to be his first attempt. Did you read it like that, or do you see it something differently?
Well, I think that both he and the Congress are ultimately saying the same thing, that they want the upliftment of the lower third of society. Difference is the route, and he didn't sketch out that route for us. If we were to go by the people who are advising him, or at least say that they are advising him, Panagaria and so on, they seem to suggest that he will discard what the UP has done on the side of subsidies, on the side of things like the right to education, on things like Narendra. We will need to wait and see what he says about it. He has said one thing, which is that it needs to be trimmed and made more efficient. He hasn't said whether he's going to discard that line of thinking entirely. In Gujarat, he has sent down subsidies, and to a large extent, outside of power, I think, where Gujaratis pay a premium for having a 24/7 power, most things are actually subsidized in the same way as they are in the rest of the country. I think the difference will come in the efficiency of governance, because he's got the majority, because his arms are not tied in the way that Manmohan Singh's were, either through his allies or within the party. I think Modi will be prominent within the BJP. He'll be able to push through much more legislation on the side of GDP growth that Manmohan Singh was not able to. Whether that will also come with a cut in subsidies, a cut in social spending, we don't know that yet. He has not said anything. It's people like Bhagwati who have said it for him. But his speech in Parliament, as you say, seemed to suggest that he will not go down that route.
Aakar, let's go back to Gujarat for a second, right? So some of the concerns that have been voiced again and again is whenever the Gujarat model came up, and we've done some data studies as well. The fact is that Gujarat's social progress has not matched its economic success. I think that's the best way to put what's perhaps either right or wrong with Gujarat. But some of the concerns are to do with, let's say, the lagging in social indicators, relative lagging in social indicators, the fear that minorities face. What happened? I mean, are those issues that are going to still be on the front burner, so to speak, in your understanding?
I think the state in Gujarat is as soft as the state is in the rest of the country. It was not able to deliver. The reason why Gujarat is low to mid, it's about 10th or 11th in most things on the HDI scale, is because the things which Mr. Modi should have done efficiently through the state, education, health, he failed. He wasn't really interested. All the ministries he kept all these years, neither education nor health was one of them. That is not a priority for him. Where Gujaratis were already doing well and will do well in the future, industry is where he focused. I think what the government ought to be doing in a developing country is to focus on the primary stuff, which I think he let go of. I hope he changes that in the future. So far as the minorities go, he heads a population that is essentially anti-Muslim, and culturally so. Ahmedabad and Baroda are the two most communally violent cities in India, and I'm not even talking of the 2002 riots. This is historic. No other city in India has as many riots as these two. He should have stepped in and calmed things down. I think what the state should be doing in this sort of society is to separate the combatants, soothe, apply the balm. He didn't do any of that. When his minister was convicted, he didn't even comment on her. So I think he's kept it going. What you heard Togadia say in Bhavnagar is commonplace. In many cities of Gujarat, it is common to have Hindus gather in public and figure out stratagems about how to get rid of the Muslim people. I think this kind of thing to allow in our society, I think is quite shameful. And he should have done something about it. He didn't care enough to.
Okay. And do you think that Anandiben Patel would perhaps approach this differently if she does?
I think she will. I think she will. She will not be as aggressive in defying this as he was. He made it a point once the media got after him. He made it a point to be stubborn about it, to not go out of his way, to refuse the cap, that sort of thing. I think she will be much more. She's a softer sort. I don't think she will have either the interest or the inclination to keep Hindu-Muslim tensions as raw as they were under Gupta.
You're saying that it's actually good for Gujarat. I mean, on one key parameter.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. His leaving helps the state to heal. Anytime you have a riot in India, whether it's under Rajiv Gandhi, whether it's under Hitendra Desai in '69 as we did, the leaving of the protagonist, the villain, the hero, whatever you want to call him, helps heal. He hasn't gone for 13 years. I think it's been a burden on us. We've had to carry this question in the national media every time he speaks, every time somebody mentions Gujarat, it's followed with a comma, but what about those days? His leaving puts a full stop to it. Of course, it doesn't help the judicial process, which was completely screwed up. It took the Supreme Court to step in. But I think from a sense of the Gujarati, that is a chapter that we will be able to move on from once he leaves.
Okay.
So, Nilanjan, it brings me to the question, I think inevitably, that there will be a lot of scrutiny of Anandiben also, because she is, the kind of person that Narendra Modi was, the persona, and now he's become Prime Minister of India. There will be a harsh scrutiny of how she administers the state, especially the economics of the state, and also what Aakar mentioned, that perhaps she could be her own person in dealing with other issues, especially where human, development, social indices are concerned.
Of course, she is going to have a huge amount of spotlight on her, because everybody is going to scrutinize each and every move around of her, and every moment in the life of Gujarat after Modi, would be looked at very carefully over the next few months, and maybe a bit more longer also, depending on how things evolve. I want to get back to a point, which Aakar mentioned, that this is the real window, first real window which the opposition has got in Gujarat after 2002. For the last 11 years, 13 years, 11 years in fact, since the 2002 riots, the Congress has actually not been interested in really being an opposition party. It has actually vacated this space, in one, at least in both in 2007 elections as well as in 2012. So there's hardly any opposition worth the name. And this is something which I think, with a man like Waghela in the center of the action, he definitely is going to revive his possible old links within this Sangh Parivar, use the old people who were, who sounded out discordant voices against Modi at the time when he was not having the best of relations with his own, within his own fraternity. So Waghela would be up to his old tricks. He is an insider. There's also some kind of threat possible from the possibility of Aam Aadmi Party emerging in some areas, especially given the kind of euphoric support which Kejriwal had developed. Despite the massive beating, I do not think that it is, I think it is too early to write off the Aam Aadmi Party as any significant force in Gujarat. There is the elections of the Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation coming up in 2015. I think that is going to be the first real electoral challenge post-Modi, that if things are going okay for the BJP or not. I think BJP has got too closely identified with Modi in the last 13 years, and BJP minus Modi is going to face a huge identity crisis. Who is going to which face? They don't have a single mass leader. No one can actually ride over various factions, go out to the people and put the votes for the party. So those are basically the biggest challenges. We're not talking in terms of, we have discussed quite a bit about the policy challenges of keeping Gujarat alive, basically to sustain and justify what Mr. Modi would want to do in the center. But I think the bigger crisis for the BJP is to maintain the political control that they have over Gujarat.
Right. So, Aakar, as we conclude, what are the forward questions in your mind that we need to be asking and revisiting? I think one of them you've clearly answered, that the state clearly now has the ability to breathe in some ways, because Modi has moved on, and it maybe helps them address some of the historical issues that have not been addressed or in the manner that they should have been addressed. What else lies ahead in your mind as we close, Aakar?
I think we are one of the few states not to have an anglicized urban white collar class, and I think one reason for that is that Anandiben Patel has accepted the RSS view that the children of the poor in all government schools should be denied access to the English alphabet till age 10. I think what that has resulted in is when Gujaratis like Azim Premji or Ratan Tata want to set up a services business, they have to look outside of Surat, Ahmedabad and Baroda. They don't have much work there. I asked Nilanjan this and he said there was zero work there in Gujarat. So I think to get back into the services sector, to develop civil society from the middle class, I think that is one big challenge that the Gujarat government faces. They failed, I think, in 14 years of that to get the business that goes to the other cities. The other thing is that how big a role Gujarat plays in Mr. Modi's Delhi model, which he has in mind, and to what extent the companies that have worked so well with him in the past, Adani, Ambani, SR, Torrent and Tata, how much of a part they will play nationally, and to what extent their influence in Gujarat increases.
Okay. Yes, Aakar, as we close.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ayaz, as we close.
Yeah, Nilanjan, now, it might seem a little facetious, but between the people of Gujarat and Narendra Modi, who's going to feel the withdrawal symptoms greater?
What did you ask?
I said between the people of Gujarat and Narendra Modi, who's going to feel the withdrawal symptoms of his going to Delhi greater?
Are you trying to ask me that would the people of Gujarat be very happy that he
No, will they experience withdrawal symptoms that Modi is not there, or Modi is going to feel withdrawal symptoms that he is not in Gujarat?
I think Modi will miss Gujarat more than Gujarat will miss Modi. I think he's too much of a hands-on man, and he will continue to want to be very much part of Gujarat.
Okay, Aakar?
I think he's the most charismatic, talented politician of our generation, and I think we will miss him. The kind of presence he had, what he did was make Gujarat talked about for a decade, which we hadn't been. Between one mid-sized state, he made it a national bit to India. The geographical aspects of it, the coastline, the ports, he's the man who made it relevant. I think we will miss that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a Gujarati speaking, and I speak from whatever I understand of the movie. I think he will miss Gujarat a lot.
Okay, great. So that's a good note to end on. Thank you very much, Aakar Patel and Nilanjan, and with me here, Ayaz Memon. Thank you very much for being with us on the India Hangout. See you guys soon.